Welcome back to the Insider's Guide to Custom Homes. Today's episode is a little different, and one that's sure to add insight into the world of real estate broker services. We're talking to someone who operates at a very high level in real estate, working with professional athletes and entertainers across the country. Ben Moss is the National Director of Compass Sports and Entertainment, overseeing a network across more than 75 markets. Ben, it's great to have you on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Rick. Excited to be here.
Great. So, Ben, let's just start right here. You're working with a client base that most people never really get to see up close. What's different about working with pro athletes versus a typical luxury buyer?
I'd say the main thing, Rick, is the layers of people around the typical athlete or entertainer. So, you've got, depending on who it is, the business manager. First of all, family tends to be much more involved, as I'm sure you've seen, building homes for these same clients over the years. So you've got family members who think they have some sort of expertise or entitlement as to having a voice or opinion on the matter when they really should be out of the way. They're just complicating matters. They have their own agenda, which is maybe in direct conflict with that of their
So this must complicate the transaction.
It complicates things for sure. And anyway, sports agents, financial advisors, friends, the whole thing. So whereas if I'm just dealing with you as a home buyer, I'm just dealing with you, maybe your wife, right? But with the typical athlete or entertainer, there are many layers involved, and it's knowing how to deal with those layers. Oftentimes, that is very different.
So what's something that would surprise people about how athletes approach buying a house? What's kind of the common thread that you see?
Well, I'd say a lot of them, they don't know what they don't know. And many times especially the younger athlete, they're scared to ask the questions. But even the older athletes, I mean, there's been many presentations that I've done for professional football teams, for instance, and I go in and show of hands. These are not rookies. These are players that now own properties. So let's talk about debt today. How many of you understand how a mortgage amortizes? They've never even heard the word, and yet many of them own homes. So I think the number one thing is just because they're an expert at their craft and we look up to them, they're scared to ask the questions that come off as being dumb. Oftentimes, I mean, some of them are very bright and very educated, but oftentimes I'm just amazed at really having to back up quite a bit to make sure they understand what they're doing and why they're doing what they're doing.
Sure, and they go through a cycle in their own career. So, they start as a rookie, they make so much money, they have a cap, whatever. Then they get their second contract, and the numbers go up. But there's an end to careers.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to house up money. So
how are you financing the purchase when you have maybe 3 years left on a playing contract, and you're probably on your second contract, you're probably not going to sign again, or if you do, it might be a series of 1-year contracts, right? So how are you setting up, or why are you setting up a 30-year fixed rate mortgage? And if you are, that's fine, but how are you
going to pay for
looking to pay that in the next 5 years, maybe, those kind of things.
So you talk about avoiding that rags to riches to rags cycle. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, the rags to riches to rags is, unfortunately, we've all seen it, and you and I've seen it directly. But I had without naming names, I had a professional baseball player years ago, and this guy had made a ton of money, had signed a 1-year, $5 million contract. He was a pitcher, but this was it. He was not going to sign anything else after that. And I was trying to sell two of his luxury homes. We were trying to dispose of properties to lower the burden. And this guy goes out and buys a brand new Rolls Royce. And so he's broke now, but just so many examples, right? I mean, another highest paid football player in the league, offensive lineman in the league at one point in time, and was dabbling in the music side. I had a recording studio that was listed for sale, and he's like, well, I can buy that. I said, well, I know you can. It was like $8 million, and he was making, $10, $11 million a year. I said, but if you can't afford that based on your music, income, then you shouldn't buy it based on your NFL income, because you're just dabbling in music.
So a lot of times they're not educated about finances. Most people aren't, especially when you get to those big contracts and you see these big dollars coming, and you don't typically think 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the line how you affect that nest egg every time you purchase something like a Rolls Royce. I mean, that's a big hunk of change.
And you and I were younger men at one point in time, and I'm sure there are many things that we would have done differently. But in time, you gain wisdom and you learn from your mistakes. Unfortunately, for a lot of these guys, a lot of these professional athletes, they don't get that second chance. They don't get the chance to build another house in your case, or sell another house in my case, for years to come, right? Into our 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s and beyond. They've got a finite time frame, and they can't really make those mistakes. But this guy with the recording studio got him to back up, got his mom involved, got his financial advisor involved, and said, I forewent probably a $500,000 commission that I could have made because I had both sides on the deal. And this was in my 20s. I could have really used that money. But, he was mad. And anyway, he ended up going broke anyway, because that's just, you kind of saw the writing on the wall. This was also guys getting bottles at nightclubs and all these kind of things. And so, you can kind of see it. And that's the rags to riches, back to rags story. If you don't change your mindset, you're going to end up right back where you came from.
Right. Cases. Well, I get that. I mean, you have to understand, this is finite.
Yeah.
It's not something that's going to go on. Every career does come to an end. And again, typically 5 years, 10 years. My brother-in-law used to be a professional football player. And I saw it firsthand. I mean, first contract, nothing. Second contract, pretty good. Third contract, great. And there goes his knee.
And then he gets cut.
That's it. And he's done.
But even guys, making guaranteed money in the NBA, it's the same thing. Like just more money that they can spend on dumb things.
Right.
Unfortunately.
So on the real estate side, what's kind of the biggest mistakes you've seen them make?
Mismanaging duration of debt, I think, is one of them. So having too much debt on too many properties, not plural, not just one, but too many properties that now are going beyond their playing career. So they should have approached it a little bit differently. I'm a big fan of fixed rate long-term debt, because you're, especially in an era of fiat debasement that we're in, since we got off the gold standard, our currency is, the US dollar has debased by 7-8% per year. So, if you can pay that dollar back on the mortgage in 29 years as today, same dollar, that's great. But you got to have a way to plan for that. So I think mismanagement of duration, and then I think just going too big too fast. So do you really need at 25 years old to build a custom home that's 8,000 square feet when you've never even owned a home that's more than like
right? And I don't think, and you can't fault them, because to know the difference between 5,000, 8,000, 10,000, it's really just a number until you actually take them to show them different properties and have them understand why do you need a bigger house, what the different features might be, and what makes sense for you.
Isn't there yet, and it's like delayed gratification. Start smaller, and that's one thing that I've tried to do as well in my life. I'm in the same house that I've been in since 2012, and I'm in all these beautiful homes all day. And there's times where I've said, "Man, I should buy that house," or you kind of play with it. But it's like it's like playing the lotto. Like, all the things that you would do with the money, and you're not actually going to win the lotto ticket. And I'm actually not going to go buy that house, but it's fun to think about it, and then go back home to a house that I can sustain, that I can afford for the long term.
Sure. Well, do athletes think about these as investments, or is it more for a lifestyle?
Yeah, so I think it's really more
both?
Lifestyle driven. I think now, I would say before, residential real estate should never have been thought of as an investment. Now, in the era of debasing fiat currency and the commodity cycle that we're in, owning actually high quality,
a bit of a hedge.
Real estate is a good hedge. It's a good inflation hedge, and like Michael Saylor of Bitcoin says, if you bought land and you want to buy land, right? Like that's the best long-term real estate investment. Now, when you put structure on it, you got to maintain it, and that's the other part. The third part to the question that you asked is they don't know how to maintain these properties to a large extent. Many times, especially they go big.
Yeah, they don't maintain themselves.
They don't maintain it, and then they keep the landscaping. I had a guy who had to spend $500,000 on new landscaping because he didn't maintain it. Just wouldn't put the sprinklers on. And literally have to spend $500,000. This was a big house. So these kind of things.
We've seen that behavior, and we try to educate. We said, here's why you might want to do this, and here's the benefit. And sometimes they listen, and sometimes you do run into the family member that knows better, and it's frustrating sometimes. But usually they get the message after a while. But I think it's a matter of maturity and how long they've been in their industry, and it might not be on that first house that they buy, but by the time maybe it's a second house or the second contractor, they learn. And we have an athlete, I won't name names, but he's someone that lives here at Landmark. His first contract did real well, and he got taken advantage of, and a lot of that money went away. And then when his second and third contract came around, he learned a little bit more about how to manage the investment. And today he's very, very savvy when it comes to real estate and really the rest of his expenses.
Yeah. But it takes a lot. A lot of these guys are in their 20s, and we all learned a lot in our 20s, and still have a lot to go through before getting to that big house maybe. And I think it's better for some of these guys to think about doing that more once they're in a second contract, for instance. Certainly if they're an NFL player, like get through the first contract, turn that townhome into an investment property, rent it out. Now you can 1031 exchange it if you want, tax deferred, right? Or you can turn it into a rental and then do a refinance, tax-free money that you're pulling out.
Real estate can be a very, very lucrative investment over time if you have the wherewithal to hang on. And we've just seen it, particularly here in South Florida over the past 10, 15
particularly
years.
in South Florida. And then, maybe you can get a real estate tax designation when you finish playing. You get the 750 hours a year that you're spending in real estate. Now you've got five properties you're managing. And now you can do bonus appreciation, like take advantage of all the tax.
Sure, and they're never going to figure this out themselves. So I guess if you can turn to someone like you for advice, I'm sure that it's a big asset on their side. So let's talk about speed for a minute. You're dealing with trades, relocations, and tight timelines. So how fast are these decisions actually happening, and how do these timelines affect your approach?
Oftentimes on the sports side, they're happening really fast. Like you get a call and somebody got traded and it's in season and you need to help them right away. Now, the other thing that people don't think about, Rick, a lot of times when you think about sports entertainment real estate is, you're building these luxury homes. That's what you do. That's your business. So for me, I can sell them a luxury home, but I might be getting a call from that athlete or their sports agent saying, hey, Ben, this person needs a 1-month rental. And that's not sexy. It's hard to find. It needs to be furnished. It might be in a market where those don't exist very well or doesn't meet their expectations.
That's a challenge.
It's a challenge, yeah. So I have to have a realtor on the other side, like in Cleveland or in Indianapolis or in Boston, whatever this market is, that understands, A, how to deal with the athlete, understands how to move quickly. And I have to be able to do the same thing in Miami and, make them realistic. A lot of people, I had a new athlete celebrity come in yesterday, wants to buy a 5-bedroom home in Pinecrest, Coral Gables, Key Biscayne. I mean, the land alone in any of these areas, and the budget is $700,000. You can't buy land for less than $1 million in any of these areas,
right?
Much more. So I have to educate that client. Now, it's not an immediate time frame for speed, but there's a lot of education that has to happen many times. Just what the rental market is in Miami is very different than the rental market in, a Midwestern city.
And I think renting, particularly for an athlete, not a bad choice. Get to know the area, because you're coming from, maybe you traded from Detroit and you're coming down to South Florida.
Right.
You don't really know the market. I mean, you've heard about Miami, but you don't really understand Coral Gables or Pinecrest or anything, the details of those areas and what the costs are. And is that really where you want to live?
Right.
You want
to deal with makes sense a lot of times.
Yeah. Do you want to deal with the traffic going from Pinecrest into downtown Miami versus maybe one day you want a condo in Miami so you can experience that lifestyle just going downstairs. So.
Yeah, and the time involved in rentals for the reward is de minimis. I mean, the reward is de minimis, and the time involvement could be very huge. And some of the expectations that some of these people have coming into a rental, it might be more hours spent than on a luxury sale, to be honest. And so it's tough, and they expect speed, performance. You got to have everything lined up, ready to go. Got to have cleaners. Got to have everything moving ready for them. And
sure, and this is days, not months. This is right
days.
Away. Because the time is a huge asset to these athletes, and
right.
They're told, hey, you got to be in Miami next week.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're under a lot of pressure. So what systems have you put in place, nationally with your the different areas that you cover to handle that kind of pressure? How do you deal with that across the country?
I'd say the main system is building out a sports and entertainment division that I run, as you mentioned at the Open, and putting the right people in these markets. So
that's 75 markets. That's no small task.
So it's all the major sports markets, but it's also like the Palm Springs and the Hamptons and the Nantuckets of the world, where you have maybe not current athletes, but maybe it's retired athletes or maybe it's entertainers. And so it's finding the right people. Leverage in this business is huge, both financial leverage, right, but also people leverage, like willing to do the work. Because when I first started doing this referral business in different markets, I'd find a realtor who I thought would be great for this client, spend a few hours online finding the right person. And then I call that person and I don't do rentals. Well, hold on a second. This person, this athlete is a first round draft pick.
And they're probably going to buy a house one day.
Buy a house. And why don't do rentals? Call me when they want to buy it.
Yeah, that's not your guy.
No, I'm not calling that person back. They're not going to be a team player. They're not going to understand how to work with these clients. And so, which is fine. That might be their business model in that city. But what I needed was somebody that can handle the luxury sale or the rental and everything in between. Now, it may not be that person. I don't do every single rental, but I have structure set up within my team to be able to do that.
So how do you choose your team members that in the different markets?
So based on geography, based on so if it's in Atlanta, we may have I think we have 6 or 7 realtors in Atlanta that are part of the Compass Sports and Entertainment division. So based on price points, based on geography, all that stuff, and I know these people. I get together with them 2 or 3 times a year in person. We have ways that we foster collaboration so that we really get to develop friendships and trust and know the personalities and who's the right fit. If it's a Latino baseball player, maybe somebody that speaks Spanish would be the right fit because culturally they feel more comfortable with that.
Do you have get-togethers or gatherings with your different members? Just
Yeah, we do.
Once a year, like
We do twice a year and in person. So we have a big retreat coming up in Chicago. It'll be like 3-4 days and everybody's coming in just for that. We have programming set up. We have dinners. We want to make it fun also. We've done golf tournaments, pickleball tournaments before because that's how you get to really know people. We share, we educate one another. So we have breakout sessions where people are talking about team structure, dealing with commissions, dealing with, may not all be about sports and entertainment, even though that's what brings us together, but we're learning from each other.
Well, different markets too. You're getting some real insight that you might not pick up just through media or other channels.
Yeah. So we're hearing firsthand what's happening. Like California is interesting right now. We're seeing a lot of people coming from California over here to Florida, which is great, but San Francisco itself is booming. And so, the real estate in San Francisco is being priced up right now, but in LA, it might be a completely different story. They have the mansion tax, or in New York. So by the way, office space is at like 100% level just about in New York for Class A office space. I wouldn't have thought that.
Wow. Yeah. Because a few years ago with the pandemic, people are going to work from home. The offices are coming,
But I know somebody who's involved in the office space build outs and furniture. And he said, Ben, I haven't been this busy in 20 years in Manhattan. So it's just interesting, like getting boots on the ground. But so you asked me about systems. So I think the real, both between like the Compass technology platform and the CRM that we have, but I think the real system is what we've developed within the sports and entertainment network to really foster relationships.
This is person to person.
Person to person, yeah.
Right, and it's great having people that you can collaborate with in other markets.
Yeah, it's a relationship.
Really understand.
At the end of the day, like trust, confidentiality, and execution.
That's great. So turning a little bit more into the privacy aspect of celebrities and athletes, how much of your business is happening off market?
More than ever before right now. Since the National Association of Realtors settlement from a couple of years ago, I think that was supposed to benefit buyers of real estate. I think it benefits really organized listing agents, actually, because I see more and more buyers wanting to look at properties, including luxury properties that are unrepresented. I'm wondering if you're seeing that too, coming in, looking to build maybe and dealing with you directly and not even dealing with the buyer's broker.
We do see that occasionally, or they have a friend that's a broker that happens to bring them in, but they don't usually know a lot about real estate, particularly custom building.
Right. So, but as a strong listing agent, now I don't have to offer those buyers, they don't know what the commission is that's being paid to a buyer's broker. For instance, before they could come into the listing, the open house and say, well, I know you're offering a 3% to the buyer's broker. So right off the bat, I'll make you an offer, but I want 3%. Off the list price, right? In this case, they don't know what I'm offering the buyer's broker because it's not on the MLS and they may not be able to find that information.
Right, and it may be a lesser commission. Look, this property sells itself. There's no reason to pay 2,
I don't have to engage
4%.
in that conversation as a listing broker. Whereas before, I had to engage in that conversation. So it's just an interesting world right now. And so, sorry, I think I'm.
So it was off market.
Off market. So because of that, as a buyer's agent, I have to provide more value than ever before to buyers to get them to want to work with me. And a big incentive for that is to find the off markets. And so Compass, for instance, has been working a lot through something called private exclusives and Compass coming soon. I think in New York, like 6-7% of the whole market in Manhattan is off market.
Now, how does that work from the seller side? Is it like, hey, I'm thinking about selling my place. If you bring me an offer, that's reasonable, I'll definitely consider it.
So it's nice. I'm going to list a property that I think should be priced at $12 million. And the owners say, well, it's water on two sides. It's an amazing lot. The house itself leaves a little bit to be desired. They want to list it for like 17. I said, okay, well, look, 17 is crazy, but we settled at 15. So 15 million, fine. I think it's still $3 million too high.
Yeah, but
we'll put it out off market. Sure. It won't sit on MLS. It won't sit on Zillow. It won't accrue days on market. We can test the price. We can get it out to consumers through Office Exclusive, through the Miami Multiple Listing Association. We can still do all the marketing around it, but it doesn't sit on the MLS. It's off market technically. And we can say, okay, based on the response that we're getting, what is the right price?
Right price, sure, of course.
And so then by the time we go on market, if it hasn't already sold, by the time we go on market, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 12 million is too low. But maybe the buyers are wrong. Maybe the sellers are wrong rather than 15 million is too high. But at least I can go through a month of that or 2 weeks of that.
And none of us are geniuses when it comes to that. We don't always know. Or
it's a one-of-one property.
Can't totally peg what the value of a particular property, especially when you're doing with these bespoke properties that are really special.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's at the luxury level, it's as much of an art as it is a science, if not more of an art than a science, because there's no other good comp for this particular house. So I have to show up and advise these clients based on absorption rates, based on the most similar comps based on other neighborhoods.
But be aware, this house has this level of finishes, which is far superior to anything in the neighborhood.
Right.
If that's what you're looking for, it's more again about lifestyle than short-term investment. This might be a better fit for you.
Right. So a lot of nuances that go into it. Yeah.
So obviously, privacy and security are a major consideration for athletes and celebrities. How do you address these concerns with your clients when it comes to locating properties, the privacy aspect?
Yeah, and just C-level people that have money now. There are targets, right? As we've seen with the United Healthcare CEO in New York, and
sure,
just unfortunately, I think the world that we're moving into. I don't know if you're a fourth turning kind of guy, but looking at cyclical, times throughout history, and you see where we are right now. And so I think the luxury buyer, the person with money, wants more security, not just the athlete or celebrity, but there's a lot of people chasing these gated neighborhoods more than ever before right now. And, a lot of people that are
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge. And then when you look at, celebrities in particular, it's not just about living somewhere. They might be having their podcast or their recording studio, or they might be watching all the game film with their offensive line and hosting them to build camaraderie. So there's a lot of things happening in the home. It's a wellness retreat now, so it's not just going to the training table at the facility, but it's having the hyperbaric chamber at home, and the compression table and the sauna. So there's a whole wellness modality that's springing up, again, primarily within athletes, entertainers, but also just wealthy people, C-level people. So the home is like the only place where you can get away from the drones flying overhead now, and the surveillance and the security cameras on every street corner. It didn't used to be like that. But now the home is not just the physical space, the protection, the security, the cameras.
Yeah, I remember Gloria Estefan. She lived on Star Island, and even with all the trees and landscaping, people were constantly coming by in boats and like, duck tours, exactly.
Yeah, Star Island is probably not the best place if you're a celebrity, because you have people that live in all the apartment buildings across on West Avenue that can get the binoculars and look right in your backyard. Shaq had a house there, and that was a problem. You had duck tours coming up all the time. So I personally don't know why Star Island. If I'm a celebrity, I don't want to be on Star Island. Anybody can just drive onto the island. I want to be in a gated neighborhood like Landmark Ranch Estates, where you are. You can't just get in here. Or, Journey's End in Coral Gables, or Tahiti Beach, or one of these, Indian Creek is so expensive as a result of that, because you're not allowed in Indian Creek unless you have a reason to be there. There's no public street.
That's one of the most secure places around. Obviously.
Exactly. So it's a challenge. And I think, well-located, very private real estate is really the way to go now.
Yeah, and we're seeing that with our clients as well. I mean, again, it's not just about athletes and celebrities, it's about high net worth people. There's a fear there, and they want to feel secure. And that's a challenge. It's not something that can't be overcome, but it really requires some new technologies. It requires people that really understand security, and also the privacy, and can appreciate how to protect that privacy.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it's a home. This is where people live. It's not, you're not just out there, waving at people as they come by your neighborhood because you're a celebrity. You're trying to, like you said, it's your retreat.
Yeah, and there's ways to shield it, with a land trust, for instance, in Florida, where you can still get homestead exemption. But if you set up an LLC, to try to hide your privacy, you don't get the homestead exemption. So understanding, is this going to be a primary residence, or is this just a seasonal home? Like, how are you setting that up? So there's lots of factors to consider there as well. But unfortunately, the real estate journalism industry, they dig. I mean, especially in South Florida, they dig through everything trying to find who owns what property.
And all you have to put is a name in and search, and even if something was the slightest mention, it will come up on a search.
It'll come up, yeah. And then you have to, if you don't want your audiovisual guys coming over there and leaking it, you got to sign confidentiality agreements, and how enforceable is it, and how tight is it? So there's a lot of considerations. I think like, as I tell my wife, like, there's no privacy anymore. Like, because she doesn't want to have our kids' faces on social media or things like that. Like, there's no privacy anymore. It doesn't exist.
No, so and with AI, it's only going to get more challenging.
AI,
Sure. So let's take this in a little different direction. You and I often work with the same type of clients, just at different points in the process. You're helping them buy or sell, and I'm helping them build. If we were both sitting in front of the same client at the same time, what would each of us be focused on? From your side as a broker, and what are the first 2 or 3 things you're thinking about immediately with these clients that are looking to build?
Well, don't over-improve the property. So what are the comps in the neighborhood? There's a house I sold here years ago that the gentleman invested about $10 million, but this was back when, land, like getting above $500 a square foot was...
Sure, I mean, homes here originally started at $2 million, $5 million was
right. So there was no comp
top.
Anywhere above $5 million in this neighborhood, and he was in it for 10. And so I sold it for 7.5, which is a record. But when I went in there, I said, I don't know what this is worth. There's no comp for this, but this is where we're going to start. It's definitely not worth more than 10. So we're going to start at just below 10. Ended up selling it for 7.5, which is a record. It was great, but it wasn't feel good because he lost money.
Sure.
So where he was getting advice from in the beginning was, well, don't over improve. Do you really need an 18,000 square foot house, first of all? And do you need all these
bells and whistles,
finishes and bells and whistles? Sure. Maybe not. So that would be the first thing, is don't overbuild. That's probably the most important thing. Like, what is the resale and how are you designing this house? Are you designing this in such a custom way that this is not going to work for the next buyer? You also want to design a house that could appeal. They're thinking about, well, this is my dream home. I'm going to be here forever. I don't care. Well, yeah, that's why you're building a house. But also at some point, you're probably going to sell that house. So if you're building such a custom floor plan that doesn't make any sense for the next buyer, you're probably not making a wise investment decision right up front. So I think those are the two things. Don't overbuild right away and build to the next luxury buyer, hopefully 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
Yeah, and I think understanding the market and what that next buyer is probably going to look for and what's too much. We've seen athletes come in and maybe put $1 million in AV. I mean, why? Right. Do you really need $1 million in AV so you can all lights on, play this music scene, da da da. They dim, they do this, the shades, the curtain. I mean,
you're not going to get that money back.
Yeah, I mean, look, some things are great and some things are very simple to do today. I mean, the Control4 used to be considered a very low-end integrator. Today, even though it's not super expensive, it does, I think, probably more than a Crestron, which you have to have someone in your place for a month, 2 or 3 months. And every time something goes wrong, you have to call that tech and move something around, where Control4, you can just get on your computer, say, change this. And it's very, very simple, very user-friendly.
That's a good example, because Crestron was the creme de la creme 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
And cost a fortune.
Nobody wants it anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't work well, because Control4 Savant work much better.
Yeah, I just did a massive house. It was 37,000 square feet, 10 acres, probably about 15 different buildings on the property, all little pods. And they are all interconnected and they all work off Control4, and it works seamlessly, which is pretty amazing. They use Josh AI over the top of that, which allows them to, talk to it. It's a high-end Siri, basically, or Alexa. And the owner is a bit of a techie kind of guy, and he likes to play with Control4. He had in his previous house, and I was kind of doubting, is this really going to work? It's probably the biggest house that's ever been in the most complex Control4 system.
Sure. But
his system's on there. I mean, he's got Daikin air conditioning. He's got all these very high-end systems. Probably has 50 to 100 cameras around the property. Even when people pull up to his gate, it reads a license plate. He can program in a friend, and it'll tell him, "Hey, Joe's arrived at your front gate," and then it automatically lets him in, and the cameras follow him around, and it pops up on the screen. So he didn't have to spend a ton of money on that integrator. And the point is, you have to put the money where it's important to you, but not overspend to where you've just outstripped the market, especially if your money is finite, and you want to make sure that if you have to move again for an athlete, I mean, it's not unusual to get traded midway through a season, and you just spent, $20 million on a property, and maybe it's worth 15. Like you said, you take a hit, so you have to be cognizant of that. So, just kind of brings me to another question: with your athletes in general, are they buying, like in South Florida, as forever homes, or are they buying in South Florida as just while they're, playing in this area? What are you seeing as a trend?
I see more forever homes, because South Florida is a place where they can train in the off season, and also a lot of them are from here. And even the ones that don't play here want to live here in the off season and maybe stay in Florida after they're done playing. So we're lucky that we're in Florida, because you've got the weather, you got the good income, no state income tax, obviously. You have lots of golf courses, you have international airports. So really, and you have lots of amenities, lots of restaurants and culture.
Yeah, so I mean, Miami's come, a long way. The past 15, 20 years, it's a different Miami.
Yeah, well, in Fort Lauderdale as well.
Yeah.
Palm Beach,
the whole South Florida.
Area, all of it is just.
Now it's interconnected with the Tri-Rail. It's interconnected with the Bright Line.
Yeah.
It's easy to get around, and it is metropolitan.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, all my Marlins players and coaches that I've helped over the last few years, like not one of them has bought in as long as I can remember. And even, when Barry Bonds and Don Mattingly were here, they rented as well. I helped them with rentals. So, I wish some of the Marlins players would stick around longer, but they just
baseball's a funny animal, especially the Marlins. The Marlins, from what I don't know a lot about baseball, but from when I kind of gather, they're basically train these players. They take the lower side players, they bring them up, and once they're worth something, they trade them away.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're lucky to keep them through the championship, but we've seen it a couple times already where they strip it back down again and there goes those ball players, and they're up in Boston or New York or some of the major markets.
But there's plenty of baseball players that I've worked with that don't even play here, that own homes here, that own substantial homes here, because this is where they want to be for the offseason.
Sure. Especially, our proximity to Latin America, the Caribbean, and a lot of athletes come from Dominican Republic, they come from Puerto Rico, they come from all over South America. And it's a hop, skip, and a jump from Miami to get to some of these places compared to from New York or wherever else.
Culturally, the Latino players feel very comfortable in Miami. So.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's such a melting pot. I mean, that's one of the great parts about living in South Florida. I mean, the culture down here is phenomenal. It just gets better and better.
Yeah,
we really love it. When you're dealing with clients, how do they look at buying versus building? Because building obviously takes 24 to 36 months. So how do you kind of justify or talk about the difference when they're considering, say, I can't find what I really want? How do you deal with that conversation?
Well, that's exactly it. I just sold a nice lot to some buyers that previously had not been thinking about building, but they were coming from New York. They're used to a certain level of finishes, and they wanted something newer. But all the spec homes that we were looking at, they didn't fit the box. They didn't fit the bill, and it wasn't just finishes. It was layout. It was location. They're looking for lots of different things. And ultimately, they decided to build and take it on as a fun project, knowing that it's going to be a 3-4 year project from start to finish. But these particular people are happy in the area, the house that they're renting, it's stable, there's a property manager.
So there's a value to waiting.
Yeah, I just had to get them around the fact that, okay, this is going to be 4 years from now that you'll be able to move into this house. Versus there are lots of opportunities, Rick, to buy a house that's maybe from the mid 90s, for instance, and renovate it. And that's a year instead of 4 years.
But there's so much difference. I mean, just structurally. I mean, the height of the ceilings, the amount of glass, the
width of the hallways,
the genre, and the different types of construction. Is it modern houses today compared to a modern house back in 2000 is a different beast.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that so these people are very particular about what they want, and then it just makes sense to build at that point.
Right. And again, we see it all the time in this segment where, again, whether it's an athlete or just someone that is looking an individual looking to build. So would you say buying a finished home is more about maximizing risk and building's more about maximizing control over the ultimate custom home? When you're dealing with, again, an athlete, are some just saying, hey, I know what I got with a finished house? Whether it's a spec house or something that's just come back on the market, maybe is a few years old. Does someone just view it, say, what, it's not my perfect house, but I know the bottom line at the end of the day. I hear all these horror stories about building a custom home, and you start with a budget of $5 million, and before you know it, you spend 10. So do you see that at all with your buyers? Or do they have that level of sophistication at that age? Because there are a lot of young people. How do they view that kind of?
Yeah, I'd say the athletes that I work with that build typically have owned homes before, and they kind of know what they're getting into, and they've lived in enough floor plans between the house that they're renting in the playing city and maybe the house that they own for the off season, that sort of thing. But they've lived between a handful of properties, I'd say, over their first or second contract and or playing career, and now they know, okay, these are the things that I really want in a home, and I'm not willing to sacrifice. I want this ceiling height, or I want
that's what
this decor. That's what typically tips the scale, and I think it's about having a fun project, like being able to create something.
It's really rewarding. I mean, one of the cool parts about dealing with someone for 3-4 years in the process is that day when they move in. I mean, just that feeling. It's just an amazing thing. I've done it myself when I built some of my custom homes that I've lived in over the years. And when you move in and all the workers are out of the house and the furniture is mostly settled and you just, the lights come on, the sun goes down, and it's something that you've worked on. It's just a special feeling.
Yeah. I mean, I think athletes are very creative. Entertainers are certainly very creative. They are creating on the floor, on the field, at any given moment, they're creating new ways to train. Like there's an evolution. And so these are not people that necessarily do things in a prescribed manner. I mean, yes, if you're trying to rehab something, then you listen to your doctors and that kind of thing. But these are generally creative people, and they want to have some creative control and process, and they enjoy home building, I think.
So you deal with entertainers. Let's talk about that a little bit, because it's not all about ball players.
Right.
So talk a little bit about the other segment of the market you deal with, the entertainment market, and how, again, how the process and then maybe the differences between athletes and entertainers.
Yeah, I mean, one difference, like I'm going to be listing a property here in Davie, and it's a 5-time Grammy award-winning music producer, and he's got a beautiful 1,400 square foot recording studio on his property, and he's had some of the top names in Latin music, there as well. George Bennett, also Shakira, people like this that have all recorded and spent time here. So it's pretty cool. But if he's walking on the street, you may not know who he is necessarily, but he's involved his lifestyle and his business into the property. And so on the music side, you see a lot.
And we see that a lot. We do a lot of recording studios.
Yeah.
And again, we don't name names, but it's such a specialty item and you have to do it just right.
Yeah.
So I think if you're another entertainer coming in, you appreciate the difference between one that's just thrown together and one that's really well thought out.
Something that's professional and has a history where some top talent has already been there.
Sure,
and,
of course.
Tested out the recording studio, so to speak, and those things matter. Sometimes it's not just it's not just like drywall and finishes. It's it's the energy, and these are creative people. They're energetic people. They feel a place. They feel a spot. And either the numbers may not line up, but they have a passion for something, and it's like, well, I want this. I sold a property, didn't make sense financially, but an off-market deal in Miami Beach a couple of years ago. I was representing a billionaire family, and the person next door was a very well-known figure, and bought the property just to create more space for him or herself, and to basically put up a pickleball court and like a wellness cabana. But that was a multi-million-dollar purchase that didn't make sense financially to tear that house down and assemble that land, but it makes sense for that person's lifestyle, and again, more privacy, more space that person can enjoy on their property without having to leave, because now they have another lot associated with their property.
I mean, we see that in maybe a smaller scale, but I know a particular client, the house is not that old, and that's it's not a tear down, but it is because I can't replace this piece of property. It's so special. If I sold it, where am I going to go?
Right.
So you do see those kind of, you call it maybe an extreme behavior, but it actually makes sense, because at the end of the day, if you're going to live in this property for 15, 20 years, raise your family there, you want to be the location.
Yeah.
It's everything in real estate.
And that's the thing. It's not all dollars and cents. This individual is not an athlete. This person has made just a ton of money and has good investments and can afford that. So that made sense.
Right.
Even though this person's retired from his.
It's not all about the investment. It's about the lifestyle.
It's about the lifestyle. Yeah.
So in a perfect world, when you have a person that wants to build, when do you typically bring in the team, the architect, the builder, the interior designer? How do you kind of collaborate with that? What's your part in that process?
So my advice, I want to bring the team together. So when I have people that are looking to build, my advice is talk to builders right from the very beginning. Because if you just go with an architect and then you start going through the planning design process, and then you try to find a builder once you're at the point of bidding out, it's too late. If you have the builder from day one, they can walk the property with you. They can help you envision in ways that maybe the architect can't. And they can also importantly value engineer throughout the process when they see what the architect is putting together, and they see, oh, hold on a second, this is going to be way out of your budget. You told me you wanted to spend $700 a square foot. This is going to be crazy over here. Don't do this. And that's the benefit of having a builder. And then so I think it's more about building the trust in the relationship rather than just who's going to give me the lowest price on a set of plans.
And you're preaching my sermon, because we see that a lot. I mean, so many times we'll get a set of plans put in front of us. The house they spent a year designing it, put their heart and soul into the design, and had an interior designer involved, an architect, and their budget is $5 million. And then they start bidding it out to builders, and they start freaking out because the $8 million, $10 million, $12 million numbers are coming in so far removed from where they really wanted to be. And no one was there to advise them to be just part of the team, to keep everyone aligned. And that's right. Something we preach all the time, because it hurts from my perspective to have to tell someone that and give them options. But the last thing I want to tell them to do is redesign your house that you had your heart and soul, this was it. This was your perfect house, and now you can't have it.
Yeah. So architects and interior designers are dreamers. They're looking to do something to, pad their portfolio many times. But the builder is practical. The builder we'll look at these plans and say, this doesn't make sense. This is a cost overrun. You know what? I build a lot of custom homes. This, maybe you should recalibrate or rethink this space, what you're doing here. Why are you doing this? But the architect will just let them go with it. Like, oh, this is amazing.
Everybody has a budget though.
Everybody has a budget. And that's the main reason. Yeah. I mean, build a relationship with somebody. This person's going to build your house. You're going to be in bed with this person for the next 4 years. So it's not going to be as transactional. Yes, there's a transaction that has to happen, but the builder will not look at you as a transactional component as they would maybe when they have to, get to the dollars and cents on bidding something out. But when they're with you from day one, you develop a relationship.
I did an episode recently. We talked about it's kind of like a marriage.
Yeah.
You get to know them, you hold hands, you're designing the plan, you're working together on budget, and then you go get your permit. Now you're building, now you're married to these people and you're with them for 2-3 years during that build process. Yeah. And even beyond that, you're still with them. I mean, we don't, just say goodbye, here's the keys and that's it. We're always connected to these people 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And if anything they need, our phones are always on, send an email, whatever, and but we'll help them out. So
I figured you'd like my answer there, Rick, but I really believe it. I really believe getting with the builder in the beginning that's the first person actually.
Between the architect and the builder, for sure, they are the two key people working together to keep everything aligned.
Yeah. Yeah, and then bringing in a designer.
Designer is the next person in the list for sure. And then you can always fold in the landscape architect and lighting designers, all that other stuff that goes with it. But yeah, I think that trio of people in the mix. But of course, you as a realtor, knowing you kind of connected all these people, I assume you stay in touch as well on the process. And, how are we doing?
Yeah, it makes you feel as a realtor, I'm not just brokering a deal, but I'm bringing relationships together. I'm building relationships. I'm connecting people with one another. And that's what I like about the business. I've said it before, but this is a relationship business. So whether, what I don't like about this business is when it feels too transactional. When I'm dealing with people who just purely look at me as a transactional figure, it doesn't feel good. I think when somebody looks at you just as a transactional person, it doesn't feel good. So I think what we find the most enjoyment out of is really adding the most value to our clients in ways that we can that maybe extend beyond the transaction.
So if you're going to give one piece of advice to someone looking to build a custom home, just one piece, what would it be?
One piece. Well, I think it would be assemble the right team from the very beginning. It would find, obviously know the market, right? But assuming you know the market and you're not overpaying for the land, understand construction costs for what you want to build, but, bring together from the very beginning, the builder and the architect, and then shortly thereafter, the interior designer. I'd say that would probably be the number one thing, because the number one way people go astray, I think, is overbuilding, going over budget.
Correct. And at the end of the day, you have to feel comfortable with your design, your builder, your architect, your designer, the whole process.
Yeah.
It makes it just so much smoother and so much more, you'll have a whole lot less sleepless nights.
Right.
Having that right team in place. Great answer. So, let's shift back to South Florida. It's becoming a major hub for athletes, for entertainers, for ultra high net worth individuals. Why do you think that's happening now? And what trends are you seeing right now in the luxury market?
Well, I think it's happening right now because, going back to COVID, Florida was a freedom state where California was saying your kids can't go to school and you have to vaccinate them. Florida was saying, come over here. We're open for business. Do what you want. Medical freedom, right? So I think that drove a certain amount of people. And then more recently, I think people have realized, hey, you know what? Florida, no state income tax. In Washington State now in 2029, they're going to start at 10%, going from 0 to 10%, right?
That's a major difference.
A tariff tax, a mansion tax. This is why I mentioned earlier, understanding historical cycles. Like, this is going to continue to happen. This is just the beginning. We're going to see more taxation coming from certain states, and
South Florida's been very pro-business, pro people. I mean, that's one thing you can say about the way the thought process behind the way this administration with DeSantis, but just in general over the many years of past 15, 20 years, it's to foster business, is to make it a really good place to live.
Regulation, but you have to be sensible, and I think in certain states it's become so nonsensical that people are just fed up with it.
And now, it works between tourism and between just the economy. It grows on itself.
Right. So I think South Florida is becoming, Florida in general, but South Florida in particular is like the latest world-class region in the world. I mean, you had 16,000 millionaires leave London last year. A lot of those people went to the Middle East thinking, well, I'm safe in Abu Dhabi or the Emirates. Well, look now, not so much, right? South Florida, we're pretty safe,
I think so.
I think we're pretty safe. Like, these things are not happening here. And so now I bet a bunch of these people are looking to leave Abu Dhabi and come over to the United States. And
It's a beautiful, it's a really great place to live. I mean, seasonally, it gets a little warm in the summer.
Yeah, you
but
leave, go to your house in the Hamptons in the summer.
Go to your house in the Hamptons.
Your 6 months plus a day here, and you're fine. So that's what I see is like the people that are coming here, putting their kids in school here, they're joining the country clubs, they're sticky, but yeah, they're leaving for the summer, and they have second homes in Nantucket or up north,
Sure.
that sort of thing, and they go away, and I get it. I do the same thing.
And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, because when it's 96, 97 degrees,
it's not
as much fun. But air conditioning works too. Let's talk about your book, The Real Estate Playbook for Pro Athletes. Yeah. What made you decide to write your book?
Yeah, so early on, I got connected with the player personnel director, who's become a good friend of mine for the Miami Dolphins, Caleb Thornhill. And I was in my mid-20s, but I always liked education, teaching, that sort of thing. And so I said, let me go in and talk to the rookies. Let me create a presentation and teach them about real estate. And meanwhile, I was still learning a lot about real estate, but I knew more than they did. So, but then it led to second year players, and then hey, let me go do this for some other teams, the Cleveland Browns, and it was a fun thing. I wasn't charging for it. It was just a way to give information away.
So how does the book distribute? Do you send it to the
So I self-published it. I spent about $25,000 to self-publish, and I'm not trying to make money from the book. Amazon makes me charge $10. Like the minimum to charge would be $10. That's what I charge if somebody wants it. But I try to give it away. It's like a closing gift. When I go do speaking things, like I'm going to be in New York this week for Music Week, talking on a panel, like I'll bring some copies and give it away. Like for me, it's like, okay, I can talk about one topic in 45 minutes or an hour talking to NFL players. And it's usually going to be debt. Like, how does a mortgage amortize? When is like showing them an amortization table, like a graph, like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize, like I'm paying all bank profit interest in the beginning, and then the principal is heavier towards the end. Like they don't know this stuff.
Yeah, who's going to explain it to them? I mean, the coach isn't going to do it. The financial advisor may or may not.
No, it's not happening. They're not learning it at the university level either. So, I love helping one or two guys that might be paying attention about this stuff, or more, hopefully. But I said, let me just write a book, get all the information that I have, and I can just give it to them. And it's buying, selling, investing, and renting. So it's 4 topics, mainly, and it's not going to go super in depth in any one area, but it's 60,000 words. So it's
a book. I
had to keep it, right. But I have lots of chapters. So if you're if you're an athlete and you want to sell your house and you want to hire a realtor, well, here are the questions to ask. Go to the chapter. Here are the questions to ask. So it was more like get your feet wet, understand some basics. Now, if you want to learn about investing, I have a bunch of formulas in there, like internal rate of return and how do you calculate a cap rate. Yeah. But there's a lot more to learn about investing if you're going to go do that. So yeah, my book is meant to be just whet the appetite and take that as like a 101 level course of some sort, and then go off and find ways to learn about investing. Go do it.
Yeah, like we said, real estate over time can be a very lucrative investment.
Yeah.
An athlete may make 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 million, whatever the dollars are, but they want to preserve that wealth and grow that wealth.
Right.
And it's not always about that one financial advisor telling them what they think they should invest in. They should understand the investments.
Yeah.
And the ramifications, like you said, of overspending, what not to do. So,
So the book is really like a legacy piece. And for me, if like my life or career ended today, at least I could say, okay, well, I contributed something to this space, and maybe if 5 guys read the book and maybe it impacted 5 lives, like that's enough for me.
Got it. So we're coming to the end of the interview, and I just want to talk about a few quick things. Let's do a rapid fire. So what's the biggest deal you've worked out without naming names?
Biggest celebrity?
Biggest deal. Biggest celebrity, whether it's an athlete, celebrity.
Well, I mean, besides like office leases that have been, as far as commission dollars, like some of those have been pretty large. My biggest deal, I think, has been $25 million.
$25 million house?
Yeah.
Now, was that a spec house? Or
it was a condo. It was a full floor condo.
Yeah, actually. Condominiums, the prices are getting
no joke
up there.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah. We seem even higher than 25 million today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've had some others in the 20s as well, but I think 25 is the tops right now.
Amazing. What's the fastest transaction you've ever closed?
I think it was 8 days.
Wow.
Cash deal, 8 days. Because, we had to get the parties lined up. I had to do like the lien search, the title search, very quick inspection. But I think that was the record, yeah.
What's the biggest mistake you've seen a buyer make?
Biggest mistake I've seen a buyer make? That's interesting. I think besides having the wrong realtor, it doesn't advise them appropriately. or in some cases not having the right realtor, is thinking that they can do it themselves when they haven't done it before. Like you put money at risk if you don't know what you're doing. And I think there are many people that can transact a lot because they've done it a lot. And maybe they don't need a realtor. But if you're new to the game or new to the area, you don't know what questions to not know. Like, for instance, if you're buying a house, beautiful house here, for instance, and maybe the backyard faces west, and you don't know that the South Florida sun 6 months of the year is going to be blasting in from the west. Well, if nobody told you that and you didn't see the house at 3:00 in the afternoon on an August day, you may not understand that.
And every evening you're getting blinded. Shut the curtains.
Right. But if the backyard orients towards the east or the north or the south, you're not getting blasted. And so you don't have to push blinds up and down. So like sometimes you just don't know what you don't know because you don't know the area and you don't know what questions to ask.
Those are all great points. What's one thing wealthy buyers consistently do right?
Wealthy buyers consistently set up the right financing. I think they understand their cash flow needs. They understand the opportunity cost of the cash that they're investing in the property. And they understand, okay, well, like for instance, STRC, look up the ticker symbol. They paid 11.5% dividend yield, right? So if I believe that STRC is going to continue to pay 11.5%, and it's actually return on capital, so you're not even paying taxes on it. So if I believe STRC is going to be able to continue to do that in the future, well, I might take more, and this is a risk tolerance level and education around that product. But if I believe that, then why would I put my cash into a down payment on a property? I'm going to finance as much as I can. I'm happy to finance the property at 6% on a 30-year mortgage, with my cash being in a very liquid STRC publicly traded company that I can trade in and out of, like a money market where the stock trades at par. So it's a preferred stock, essentially, trades at par. That's how it's designed. So if I believe I can sell that at $100, which is what I bought it for, tomorrow, if I have to access that cash, well, I'm gonna lever up as much as I can.
So understanding the nuance of finances.
Understanding the nuance of finances. I think it all comes down to debt and understanding. Then after that would be the tax ramifications. Maybe turning the property into an investment property before you move out, so that then you can do a 1031 exchange and defer the capital gains tax beyond the $500,000 exclusion that you may have. So there's all these things. How do you do bonus depreciation on a property? Like, I'm buying property every year.
Now, do you advise some of your clients about this? Because obviously you're pretty well.
I talk about it. Yeah, I'm not a CPA, but I do bonus depreciation on properties to offset taxable income because I'm a real estate professional for tax purposes. So, I'm trying to figure out how do I pay as little tax as possible legally in a way that the tax code allows me to do based on my career. And so understanding finance and tax ramifications.
Well, thanks. Well, Ben, this has been a fantastic interview. I really appreciate your insight, and sharing your knowledge with our listeners is a great benefit. So thanks again for being here.
Rick. You're a master at what you do, so I appreciate it.
So where can people learn a little bit more about you or connect with you directly?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at Ben Moss Group, and my website is benmossgroup.com. So those would be two of the easiest ways.
Great. Well, thanks again for joining us. And to our listeners, build it right, build it informed, build it the Landmark way. Relax and enjoy the journey.